Morning rush hour at the Golden Cup Café in downtown Atlanta was always a dance of chaos. Espresso machines hissed, milk steamed rhythmically, and the line of sleepy-eyed customers stretched far beyond the door. James Walker thrived in this busy environment. At 28, James was an experienced barista, known for his warm smile, charismatic presence, and exceptional coffee-making skills. His craft wasn't just about coffee. It was about connections, community, and comfort. James had worked at Golden Cup for nearly 5 years. The cafe was trendy, strategically located in a bustling business district. Despite long hours and modest pay, James genuinely enjoyed the interaction and familiarity with regular customers. He dreamed quietly of one day owning his cafe, a welcoming haven for everyone, no matter their background. However, beneath the cafe's friendly facade was its conservative owner, Roger Duncan. Roger, a stern man in his mid-50s, cared predominantly about profits and the cafe's image. Roger's narrow worldview sometimes clashed with James's inclusive outlook, but James kept those interactions civil, focusing instead on his work and customers. It was a bright Tuesday morning when the incident happened. The sun pierced through the windows, reflecting on polished wooden tables. James, tall and lean, with neatly trimmed hair and an easygoing manner, was at his station preparing cappuccinos and lattes, greeting everyone by name. Around 8:30 a.m., Arthur Banks entered, an affluent attorney known to be challenging. Arthur, a regular who often complained about minor details, had an intimidating demeanor and was well connected socially. His custom suit and expensive cologne announced his arrival long before he reached the counter. James greeted him as always. "Good morning, Mr. Banks. The usual?" Arthur barely glanced up from his phone. "Yes, and make sure it's actually hot this time." James nodded politely, used to the subtle jabs. Arthur was notorious among the staff for his snide comments. But today, the atmosphere grew unexpectedly tense when Arthur glanced over at a poster behind James, promoting an upcoming diversity awareness event at the cafe. Arthur scoffed loudly, drawing attention from nearby customers. Diversity awareness? Ridiculous. What's next? Preferential treatment based on skin color? James's jaw tightened slightly, but he maintained his composure, calmly preparing Arthur's beverage. "We believe every customer deserves respect and understanding here, Mr. Banks," James replied, his voice clear yet respectful. Arthur sneered, leaning forward provocatively. "Well, that's nice and politically correct, but let's face it. This whole diversity charade is nothing but a way to make people like you feel better about yourselves." James's hands paused briefly over the coffee machine, his pulse quickening, anger stirring beneath his professional demeanor. Still, he spoke with quiet determination. "Mr. Banks, respect isn't political correctness. It's basic human decency." The cafe fell into uneasy silence. Several customers watched, sensing the tension brewing. Arthur reddened, his voice now louder, drawing even more attention. "Are you implying I lack basic human decency?" James hesitated briefly but chose his words with care. "I'm simply suggesting that respect is something everyone deserves, regardless of their differences." Arthur stared, eyes flashing with anger. Without another word, he snatched his coffee from the counter, stormed toward the door, turned briefly, and called back sharply, "Roger will hear about this." The door slammed shut, leaving behind a stunned silence. Whispers rippled across the cafe. Customers exchanged awkward glances. James, outwardly calm, felt a surge of anxiety. He knew Roger valued Arthur's regular patronage more than most, but he'd done nothing wrong. He breathed deeply, hoping the incident would blow over. An hour later, Roger Duncan arrived at the cafe, clearly agitated. Without greeting any customers or staff, he beckoned James into the back office. Roger shut the door abruptly, face stern and unhappy. "What exactly did you say to Arthur Banks today?" Roger asked sharply, his voice cold. James swallowed, maintaining eye contact. "Nothing inappropriate, sir. Mr. Banks made a negative remark about the cafe's diversity event. I responded politely and respectfully." Roger's expression hardened further. "Banks called me personally, said you insulted him publicly, accused him of being a racist." "That's not true," James said evenly. "I defended our cafe's values without disrespecting Mr. Banks. There were witnesses." Roger waved his hand dismissively. "I don't care about witnesses. I care about my business. Banks is influential. He brings clients here regularly. I can't risk losing his business over petty arguments." James felt a rising frustration, though his voice remained composed. "Sir, I apologize if this caused discomfort, but I was courteous. Customers heard the exchange clearly. Perception matters more than facts, Roger snapped, shaking his head irritably. Listen, James, you're good at your job, but causing friction with customers is unacceptable. James stood straight, determination in his voice. I haven't caused friction intentionally, but I won't apologize for defending basic respect. Roger's eyes narrowed, contemplating for a moment before stating bluntly, James, consider this your final warning. Another incident like this and you're gone. Understood? James stared quietly, anger and disappointment mingling within him. Yet he nodded slightly. Understood. Returning to the front, James struggled to maintain his usual warmth. Customers smiled sympathetically. Some had overheard Roger's raised voice through the office door. However, the shift ended without further incidents. That evening, James walked home slowly, thoughts swirling. He loved the cafe, the regulars, the energy. But the realization that his values conflicted so sharply with Roger's left a bitter taste. He yearned for a place where fairness and respect were genuine, not conditional. As the sun set over Atlanta's skyline, James made a silent promise to himself. One day soon, he'd create a cafe built on respect and inclusivity. A space that valued every person equally, without compromise or fear. He didn't yet realize how soon that promise would become his only choice. James Walker had always been an optimist. Raised in a close-knit community in East Atlanta, he learned early the power of resilience and perseverance. His mother, Evelyn Walker, was a respected community activist who tirelessly advocated for equality and inclusion, while his father, Thomas Walker, owned a modest but beloved local bookstore. From his parents, James inherited not only their determination, but also their unwavering sense of justice. As he walked home from the cafe that day, James couldn't help but replay the incident repeatedly in his mind, frustration simmering beneath his usually calm exterior. He arrived at his apartment, located on a quiet street lined with sprawling oak trees, just as dusk painted the sky with shades of gold and lavender. James unlocked the door and stepped inside, dropping his keys onto the small wooden table near the entrance. He flipped on the lights, revealing the neatly kept but modest space he called home. The living room was simple. Bookshelves lined with novels, biographies, and coffee manuals shared space with photos of his family. James stood for a moment, staring blankly at the pictures, his mind restless and troubled. He collapsed onto the couch, rubbing his temples, trying to shake off the growing unease. James understood that Roger's harsh reaction wasn't isolated. It reflected a deeper issue he'd seen countless times before. Roger's cafe thrived on the surface image of diversity and acceptance, but the truth lay in stark contrast. James had witnessed subtle biases and inequalities throughout his employment at Golden Cup, but had always remained patient, believing change was possible from within. Today's confrontation forced him to realize that perhaps he had been naive. He now faced a stark choice: compromise his integrity or risk his livelihood. The evening stretched on slowly. James picked up his phone, scrolling aimlessly through social media, hoping to distract himself. Notifications popped up. Friends sharing photos of family gatherings, inspirational quotes, and community events. He smiled slightly at an update from his childhood friend, Marcus Reynolds. Marcus had recently opened an art studio dedicated to empowering local youth through creative expression. The familiar sight sparked a flicker of inspiration within James. James hesitated briefly before deciding to call Marcus. The phone rang twice before Marcus answered, his deep voice cheerful as always. Hey James, long time no hear. What's up? Marcus, hey, James began, attempting to sound upbeat but feeling his voice betray him slightly. Got a minute? Marcus immediately sensed his friend's hesitation. Of course, man. You sound serious. Everything okay? James sighed deeply, feeling the weight of the day press upon him. Honestly, no. Had a rough day at work, got into a situation with a customer making racist comments. I kept my cool, but somehow I'm the bad guy. Marcus exhaled sharply, a familiar frustration evident in his voice. Typical. You did everything right, James. It's ridiculous you're even having this conversation. James sank deeper into the couch, running a weary hand through his hair. I know, Marcus, but my boss doesn't see it that way. He's more concerned about keeping powerful customers than standing up for what's right. He gave me an ultimatum today. One more incident, and I'm out. Marcus was silent momentarily, then spoke slowly, carefully choosing his words. James, you've been patient far too long, dealing with that man's toxic environment. Have you thought about finally taking that step you've always dreamed of? Opening your own place? James hesitated, though the suggestion wasn't new. He'd considered it countless times, during slow shifts, late-night brainstorming sessions, and conversations with close friends. But the practicalities always held him back. Finances, fear of failure, and the overwhelming uncertainty of entrepreneurship. Marcus, you know I've dreamed about it, but it's easier said than done. I don't have the money or the backing. It's risky. And what if it doesn't work? Marcus laughed lightly, reassuringly. Brother, every dream worth pursuing has its risks. Look at me. I took out loans, faced plenty of skepticism, and now my studio's thriving. The community supports authenticity, James. Your cafe would be more than coffee. It'd represent something important. People will rally behind that. James pondered Marcus's words carefully. It was true. Marcus's studio had flourished precisely because of its clear, unapologetic mission, providing an inclusive, safe space for creativity. Perhaps James's vision could similarly inspire support. Let's say I do this, James ventured cautiously. I'd need guidance, Marcus. I don't know the first thing about leases, loans, or even setting up a business. Marcus laughed again, warmly encouraging. You're not alone, James. We have a community full of resources, people who'd love nothing more than to see you succeed. Remember my friend Erica Price? She's a lawyer specializing in small businesses. She'd gladly help you out. Plus, there's Derek Shaw, remember him? Owns that small credit union downtown. He could guide you on financing. Hearing familiar names from their shared past lifted James's spirits slightly. You think they'd actually help? Without question, Marcus affirmed confidently. The community needs spaces like the one you're envisioning. Atlanta is progressive but still has a long way to go. Creating your own cafe isn't just about coffee. It's an act of resistance, James. A clear stand against the casual prejudices you've been subjected to. James felt the weight of Marcus's conviction slowly infuse him with renewed energy. The day's tensions eased slightly, replaced by cautious optimism. You're persuasive, Marcus. You really think I could pull this off? Marcus's voice softened earnestly. James, if anyone can, it's you. You've always stood up for what matters. It's about time your talents were recognized and appreciated fully, not exploited or minimized. The call ended soon after, leaving James reflective. He felt a fire ignite within, an ambition fueled by Marcus's encouragement and his own frustration at the injustices he'd quietly endured. That night, sleep came reluctantly, his mind spinning with possibilities, plans, fears, and hope. The following morning, James returned to Golden Cup Café feeling restless yet resolute. The familiar scent of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air, mingling with the gentle hum of early morning conversation. James slipped behind the counter quietly, greeted by his co-worker Emily Grant. Emily, a friendly and outgoing barista in her early 20s, immediately sensed something different. You okay, James? Roger didn't give you too much trouble yesterday, did he? She asked softly, concern evident in her bright green eyes. James shook his head gently, attempting to smile reassuringly. I'm all right, Emily. Just thinking a lot about what's next. She leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Look, we all heard how Roger talked to you. Arthur Banks was completely out of line. If it means anything, we've got your back. James smiled appreciatively, touched by Emily's support. Means everything, Emily. More than you know. The cafe door swung open abruptly, and Roger entered briskly, glaring sharply in James's direction. The tension returned immediately. Roger's voice was clipped and terse as he gestured James toward the office. James, we need to talk, now. James nodded once, steeling himself internally. He followed Roger silently, aware that whatever came next might profoundly alter his life trajectory. Entering the office, Roger shut the door firmly, standing opposite James, his posture rigid. James, Arthur Banks contacted corporate this morning. He's threatening to take his business and considerable influence elsewhere unless immediate action is taken, Roger declared coldly, eyes unwavering. I have no choice. James met Roger's gaze, heart pounding. He already knew Roger's next words before he spoke them. I'm sorry, James, but you're fired. James stood silently, feeling the room close around him as Roger's words echoed sharply, each syllable leaving a deep, lasting sting. Though part of him had anticipated this moment from the instant he defended himself against Arthur Banks's thinly veiled prejudice, the abrupt finality of Roger's declaration still shook him to his core. Roger watched James, expression cold and distant, as if waiting for protest or an argument. But James refused to grant him the satisfaction. Instead, he took a deep, steadying breath, met Roger's steely gaze directly, and responded with quiet dignity. "I understand," James replied, his voice calm but edged with quiet resolve. "Just so we're clear, you're firing me because a wealthy client was uncomfortable being politely challenged on his racist remarks." Roger bristled visibly, his face reddening with irritation. "Don't twist this into something it's not, James. This is business, not personal." James shook his head slowly, disappointment etched deeply into his features. "That's exactly the problem, Roger. You don't even realize that it should be personal. People matter more than profit. But clearly, that isn't your priority." Roger's eyes narrowed dangerously. "I won't debate this further. Pack your belongings. You have 10 minutes to leave." Without further words, James exited the small office, stepping back into the bright lights and busy hum of the cafe. The familiar scents of coffee and pastries, the clinking of cups, and the soft murmur of customers had suddenly become distant, foreign, no longer welcoming, but alienating. Emily stood nearby, her eyes widening in alarm as she immediately noticed his tense posture and strained expression. "James?" she whispered anxiously, moving closer. "What happened?" James managed a faint, reassuring smile, though his eyes revealed the pain and anger simmering beneath the surface. "Exactly what we expected. Roger fired me." Emily's jaw dropped, her eyes filling with shock and anger. "That's ridiculous. He can't do this. Everyone heard you being polite." "Apparently Roger prefers his influential clientele," James said dryly, though bitterness seeped through despite his effort to maintain composure. "It's done, Emily, but maybe it's for the best." Emily glanced around quickly, lowering her voice urgently. "We can talk to corporate or file a complaint, James. This isn't right." James shook his head firmly, grateful for her passion, but already resolved in his own mind. "I appreciate your support, Emily, really, but I think it's time for me to move forward on my own terms. I've been putting this off too long anyway." Emily hesitated, clearly distressed yet admiring his courage. "If you leave, this place loses its heart. Roger will regret it. He doesn't realize how many regulars come here specifically for you." James smiled softly, warmed by her sincerity. "Maybe someday he'll understand, or maybe not. Either way, my path is elsewhere." Quickly gathering his belongings, a small bag containing his apron, favorite mug, and a few personal items, James felt strangely liberated. His anger was now overshadowed by determination, a quiet resolve hardening into certainty. He had long dreamed of creating his own cafe, a place genuinely reflective of his values: compassion, respect, equality, and authenticity. This painful moment had become the catalyst he needed to finally move forward. James exited Golden Cup Café without looking back, stepping onto the bustling sidewalk. The sun blazed brightly above, as though lighting his way forward. He stood momentarily, taking in the city around him, feeling both lost and found at once. James knew he was at a crossroads. Behind him lay the safety of familiar territory. Ahead stretched uncertainty, struggle, and the promise of something more meaningful. On impulse, he pulled out his phone and dialed Marcus again. Marcus answered almost immediately, cheerful as always. "James, twice in 2 days. This must be serious." "More serious than yesterday," James admitted, voice steadier than he felt. "Roger fired me. It's official. I'm unemployed." Marcus inhaled sharply, absorbing the gravity of the news before responding slowly and thoughtfully. "I'm sorry, brother, but honestly, maybe it's exactly what needed to happen. You've been holding yourself back for too long. This is your chance." James exhaled, feeling the weight lift slightly from his chest. "That's exactly how I'm choosing to see it, Marcus. But it's terrifying. No job, no security. I don't even know where to start." Marcus laughed gently, reassuringly. "You're starting exactly where every entrepreneur does. Ground zero. Remember Erica Price and Derek Shaw? I already spoke to them last night. They're ready to meet whenever you are." James's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "You already talked to them?" "Of course I did," Marcus chuckled warmly. "I had a feeling this was coming, James. Derek mentioned some community-backed loans available specifically for businesses like yours. Erica's ready to advise you through all the paperwork. The ball is already rolling. You just need to step forward and claim your space." Gratitude swelled inside James. Marcus's unwavering belief and proactive support left him profoundly touched. "Marcus, I don't know what I'd do without you." "You won't have to find out. Marcus said warmly. Now let's get started. Meet us tonight at Erica's office. We'll sketch out a plan. That evening, James arrived at Erica Price's small law office, tucked neatly into a historic brick building near downtown Atlanta. Erica was waiting, poised and professional yet warmly welcoming. Derek Shaw joined shortly after, bringing files and documents outlining loan possibilities. Together, the group huddled around a modest conference table, carefully discussing James's vision, financial options, and potential locations. Erica, an articulate and experienced business attorney, took extensive notes, her sharp eyes focused intently on James as he spoke passionately about his cafe concept. This is about more than coffee, James explained earnestly, his voice strong with conviction. It's about creating a space where everyone, regardless of their background, feels valued and welcome. A place where respect is genuine, not performative. Authentic diversity and inclusion aren't just buzzwords to me. They're core principles. Derek smiled approvingly, nodding his head in agreement. The community desperately needs exactly that kind of place. A lot of folks have felt alienated or unwelcome in establishments that only pretend to care. Your cafe could become a beacon, James, a model for other businesses. The discussion stretched late into the night. Plans were made, financial projections outlined, and potential properties identified. By the time James left Erica's office, his exhaustion was overshadowed entirely by excitement and renewed purpose. He felt deeply inspired by the genuine support and enthusiasm his friends showed, and suddenly, his dream felt tangibly possible. The following days became a whirlwind. James, guided by Erica, registered his business name, Open Grounds Café. Derek helped him secure a small community-funded loan with manageable terms. Marcus introduced him to local artists and designers, eager to help create the welcoming aesthetic James envisioned. The momentum rapidly built, transforming uncertainty into action, hope into reality. Yet beneath the excitement lingered fear and vulnerability. James knew failure remained possible. He'd risked everything, his savings, reputation, and future stability, on a bold vision. But more than fear of failure was his resolve, to build something meaningful and lasting. He believed deeply in his mission, trusting the community would rally around authenticity and sincerity. As he signed the lease on a modest storefront in a vibrant neighborhood known for its cultural diversity, James felt a sense of profound relief and burgeoning pride. The cafe he once only dreamed about was quickly becoming a reality, propelled forward by courage, community, and conviction. The bitter ending at Golden Cup had become an essential beginning, leading James closer to a destiny he could finally claim fully as his own. James Walker's life rapidly transformed after signing the lease for the new cafe. Located in East Atlanta, the chosen space was nestled within a bustling, vibrant neighborhood filled with diverse local businesses and colorful street murals that echoed the community's eclectic character. The storefront, though modest and slightly worn, promised enormous potential. It was precisely the blank canvas James envisioned, a place he could shape authentically, aligned with his values and dreams. In the weeks following his abrupt departure from Golden Cup, James immersed himself entirely in the project. He arrived early each morning, often before dawn, unlocking the creaky metal gates and stepping inside, greeted by dusty air and silence that gradually transformed into creative bustle as the days progressed. Marcus frequently stopped by, offering not just moral support but practical assistance, whether hauling heavy furniture or brainstorming decor ideas. Erica and Derek dropped in occasionally too, bringing coffee, pastries, and valuable advice. Emily, his former co-worker at Golden Cup, visited regularly after her shifts, enthusiastically pitching in and spreading the word among their mutual acquaintances. It quickly became clear how deeply James had impacted those around him. Word of his unfair dismissal spread swiftly through local social networks, drawing widespread community sympathy. Many people, former customers, neighborhood residents, and even strangers, approached him spontaneously, expressing support and solidarity. Early one morning, as James and Marcus struggled to paint the cafe walls in warm shades of earthy greens and rich creams, there was a hesitant knock at the partially opened front door. James turned, surprised, to find a young woman hovering uncertainly on the threshold. She appeared to be in her early 30s, petite, with expressive brown eyes and shoulder-length wavy black hair. Her demeanor was shy yet approachable, and she clutched a small leather portfolio nervously. "Hi," she began softly, smiling uncertainly. "I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you James Walker?" James quickly set down his paint roller, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yes, that's me. Come on in." She stepped inside cautiously, glancing around the partially renovated space, visibly impressed. "I'm Olivia Carter," she said warmly, extending a tentative hand. "I heard about your cafe through Emily. I'm a friend of hers. She said you might need some help?" James smiled appreciatively, shaking her hand firmly. "Absolutely. I appreciate you coming. What kind of help?" Olivia opened her portfolio slowly, revealing carefully sketched illustrations and elegant lettering. "I'm a freelance graphic designer and artist," she explained gently, her confidence growing as she spoke passionately about her craft. "I heard about your vision for this place, about making it welcoming and inclusive. I'd love to help you create branding, signage, or art installations to reflect those values." James's eyes lit up with enthusiasm as he studied Olivia's sketches. Her talent was evident. Each design exuded warmth, elegance, and a distinctly personal touch. "These are incredible," James said genuinely, feeling excitement surge again. "I haven't even thought about signage yet. Could you really help with this?" Olivia nodded eagerly, visibly relieved. "It would mean a lot to be part of something meaningful like this cafe. I think this neighborhood needs exactly what you're building." "Then welcome aboard," James said warmly, extending his hand again, this time sealing a new partnership. Olivia beamed happily, already visibly relaxing, thrilled by the acceptance. Days passed quickly, each filled with activity and growing anticipation. Olivia swiftly became integral to the team, working tirelessly to capture the cafe's spirit visually. She meticulously crafted the logo, a simple yet evocative design depicting intertwined coffee beans symbolizing unity and community. She carefully chose warm, earthy tones that resonated perfectly with James's vision. As renovations progressed, James also encountered another unexpected visitor, Samuel Carter, Olivia's younger brother, who coincidentally lived nearby and was well known within the neighborhood as a charismatic musician. Samuel, a handsome young man in his mid-20s, carried an easy charm and contagious optimism, quickly becoming a regular presence at the cafe, lending his cheerful energy and musical talent to boost morale. Samuel's involvement soon sparked another dimension of James's evolving dream. He envisioned live performances by local musicians and artists becoming central to Open Grounds Café's identity. Samuel eagerly supported the idea, promising to organize community jam sessions, poetry nights, and artistic collaborations, infusing the space with creativity and vibrant energy. With renovations nearing completion, anticipation within the neighborhood swelled visibly. James and Olivia stood together one afternoon, hanging freshly printed menus on the newly painted walls, when an elderly woman approached cautiously, peeking inside curiously. Her silver hair, neatly pinned, framed wise eyes that sparkled with genuine curiosity. "Excuse me," she began softly, a warm smile playing at her lips. "Is this going to be a coffee shop?" James approached warmly, inviting her inside. "Yes, ma'am. Opening very soon." She stepped forward, glancing around appreciatively. "I've lived in this neighborhood 40 years, she said thoughtfully, introducing herself as Esther Mills. "Saw this storefront empty too long. Always hoped something positive would move in. What kind of place are you building here?" James exchanged a quick, proud glance with Olivia. "We're opening a cafe called Open Grounds. It'll be more than coffee. It'll be a community hub where every single person feels welcome and respected. We'll offer local music, art events, discussions on community issues, and of course, great coffee." Esther's expression softened warmly, visibly moved by his sincerity. "Sounds wonderful," she said gently, her voice slightly emotional. "You know, this community has seen its share of divisions over the years. A place like yours, built on unity and respect, is exactly what we need." Esther became a regular visitor, often stopping by to offer encouragement and, occasionally, homemade cookies that became a favorite snack among the team. Through Esther, James connected with numerous local leaders, activists, and longtime residents, further strengthening his cafe's bond with the neighborhood. Meanwhile, as community anticipation grew, word of James's project eventually reached Roger Duncan, owner of Golden Cup. Roger, initially dismissive of James's entrepreneurial attempt, began hearing consistent praise and excitement from customers, many of whom openly criticized Roger for how he'd treated James. This unexpected backlash sparked in Roger an uneasy sense of envy and regret. Roger's frustration deepened upon hearing that Arthur Banks, whose arrogance had triggered the entire situation, had stopped frequenting Golden Cup, having grown bored with the establishment. Roger faced dwindling patronage, recognizing too late that losing James had cost him more than a good employee. It had cost him credibility within the community. One afternoon, shortly before the grand opening, Emily visited Open Grounds Café, bringing surprising news. "Roger actually reached out," she confided quietly, cautiously watching James's reaction. "He wants to meet with you, James. He hinted at an apology or possibly offering you your job back. James stood silent momentarily, conflicted emotions swirling within. Finally, he responded calmly but resolutely. Tell Roger I appreciate the offer, but I've moved on. This cafe is my future, my opportunity to create something honest and meaningful. I'm not going backward. Emily smiled approvingly, pride evident in her expression. You made the right choice, James. Everyone here already feels the difference. This place will be amazing. Finally, after weeks of intense work, renovation, preparation, and anticipation, Open Grounds Café was ready. James stood quietly late one evening, surveying the completed space. Warm lighting gently illuminated cozy tables, comfortable chairs, beautiful local artwork by Olivia, and a small stage designed for performances arranged by Samuel. He inhaled deeply, savoring the moment. This cafe represented everything he'd dreamed: authenticity, diversity, inclusion, and community. Tomorrow was the grand opening. James knew challenges lay ahead, but he stood firm in his vision. Open Grounds was no longer merely his. It belonged fully to the community he'd come to cherish, its success intertwined with theirs. James felt deeply grateful, realizing the painful end at Golden Cup had been essential. It had freed him to build something far greater, rooted deeply in integrity and genuine community connection. Tomorrow would be the beginning. The sun rose gently over East Atlanta, casting soft golden hues across the rooftops and quiet streets as the neighborhood slowly awakened. James Walker had barely slept, tossing restlessly through the night, his mind racing with thoughts, hopes, and anxious excitement about the day ahead. The grand opening of Open Grounds Café. Arriving at the cafe shortly after sunrise, James unlocked the freshly painted door, stepping inside and inhaling deeply. The inviting scent of polished wood, freshly ground coffee beans, and new furniture mingled, creating a comforting aroma that symbolized new beginnings. Every detail, from the carefully curated artwork to the delicate arrangement of tables and chairs, reflected James's thoughtful vision of inclusion and community. Moments after opening, Olivia Carter arrived, smiling brightly, carrying additional decor items and freshly printed promotional flyers she'd designed overnight. Samuel followed closely behind, cheerfully humming as he carried his guitar and small amplifier, preparing to provide live music later that morning. Marcus, Erica, and Derek soon appeared, each bearing small gifts and bouquets of brightly colored flowers to celebrate the cafe's inaugural day. The early morning hours flew by quickly, bustling with final preparations. Olivia meticulously arranged floral centerpieces, Samuel tuned his guitar, and Marcus and Derek positioned the outdoor chalkboard sign prominently, proudly announcing, "Open Grounds Café, now open, a place for everyone." Erica carefully checked the coffee machines, ensuring everything was perfectly operational, smiling reassuringly at James's evident nervousness. By 9 a.m., a small crowd had begun to form outside, neighbors and community members eagerly awaiting entry, buzzing with curiosity and anticipation. Esther Mills, smiling warmly, stood at the front of the line, proudly holding a small bouquet of fresh flowers from her garden. Precisely at 9:30, James stepped outside, greeted by enthusiastic applause and cheers. His heart swelled with emotion, overwhelmed by the tangible support and excitement radiating from the crowd. Clearing his throat slightly, he addressed the gathering, his voice steady despite internal butterflies. "Thank you all so much for being here today. It means more than I can express," James began sincerely, scanning the familiar faces gathered closely. This cafe isn't just about coffee. It's about community, respect, and inclusion. Every single person, regardless of background, race, or beliefs, is welcome here. This is your cafe, and it's my deepest hope you feel at home. The crowd erupted again in applause, many nodding appreciatively, deeply moved by his genuine words. James stepped aside, inviting Esther to ceremonially cut the ribbon. Her elderly hands trembled slightly, eyes moist with proud tears as she carefully sliced through the silky ribbon. The doors of Open Grounds Café swung open officially for the very first time. Immediately, the cafe filled with life, laughter, and conversation. James hurried behind the counter, joined by Emily, who had requested the day off specifically to help him handle the rush. Together, they worked seamlessly, James's hands moving instinctively, crafting perfect lattes, espressos, and cappuccinos, each cup a testament to his craft and passion. Within minutes, the cafe became a lively hub of chatter and warmth. Samuel strummed gentle acoustic tunes from the small stage, his smooth voice setting a soothing ambiance, enhancing the cozy, welcoming atmosphere. Olivia moved effortlessly around the cafe, warmly greeting customers and proudly discussing the artwork adorning the walls. Word of mouth quickly spread through the neighborhood, steadily increasing the crowd. Locals brought friends, families arrived with children eager to taste homemade pastries, and small groups of students occupied cozy corners, notebooks and laptops open, enjoying the cafe's vibrant yet calming energy. By midday, James felt his initial nervousness slowly dissipating, replaced by profound joy and gratitude. Marcus approached during a brief lull, clapping James firmly on the shoulder, grinning proudly. "You did it, man. Look around. This is exactly what you dreamed." James smiled gratefully, taking a moment to fully absorb the bustling cafe scene. "I couldn't have done it without all of you, Marcus. This cafe belongs to everyone." Marcus nodded approvingly, eyes sparkling with pride. "The community knows authenticity, James. They recognize when someone genuinely cares. This success today isn't coincidence. It's because you built something real." Later in the afternoon, as business continued thriving, James noticed a familiar figure hesitating awkwardly near the cafe's entrance. Surprised, James recognized Roger Duncan, the very man whose harshness had unintentionally inspired James's entrepreneurial journey. Roger looked distinctly uncomfortable, standing rigidly, his gaze fixed uncertainly on the busy cafe interior. After briefly contemplating, James stepped forward, approaching Roger calmly, yet assertively. "Hello, Roger," James said evenly, extending his hand politely, his tone neutral but cordial. "Didn't expect to see you here today." Roger hesitated momentarily before shaking James's hand cautiously, clearing his throat awkwardly. I wanted to see for myself. People keep talking about your cafe. I heard it's quite impressive." James offered a measured smile, glancing briefly around the crowded space. "We've had amazing community support. People appreciate what we're trying to build here." Roger shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling internally before finally speaking, voice low and tinged with rare humility. "I may have made a mistake, James. Letting you go. Your cafe is everything I once imagined Golden Cup could be, but somehow lost sight of along the way." James listened carefully, choosing his response thoughtfully yet firmly. "You valued profit over people, Roger. The difference here is that I'll never compromise community for convenience or money." Roger nodded slowly, regret evident in his eyes. "I see that clearly now. Arthur Banks left shortly after you did, and business has suffered. I underestimated your impact. Your integrity mattered more to customers than I realized." James considered Roger's admission silently, allowing the words to resonate deeply. After a thoughtful pause, he offered sincerely, "It's never too late, Roger. Every business can choose to be better, but it has to come from genuine change, not just superficial gestures." Roger sighed softly, eyes reflective and humbled. "I understand that now. You've set a powerful example, James. Perhaps it's time I learned from it." Roger departed shortly afterward, leaving James reflective. Despite their bitter parting, James held no resentment, only a quiet hope that Roger genuinely understood the lessons today had offered. As the grand opening day drew toward evening, the cafe maintained steady business. Esther remained until nearly closing, chatting warmly with friends new and old. Olivia and Samuel exchanged cheerful laughter, celebrating their own crucial roles in the cafe's successful launch. Emily, Marcus, Erica, and Derek lingered, reveling in collective pride at the day's success. Finally, as night fell gently over East Atlanta, James locked the cafe doors, the vibrant energy of the opening day still lingering warmly within the quiet space. Standing alone momentarily, he absorbed the profound significance of the day. What had once seemed merely an idealistic dream was now tangible. A thriving, inclusive cafe built firmly on authentic values and community spirit. James stepped into the evening air, breathing deeply, heart full of quiet triumph and profound gratitude. Open Grounds Café had become reality, a beacon of community connection and genuine respect, precisely as he'd envisioned. Yet even amid success, James felt intuitively this was merely the beginning. Challenges lay ahead, tests of integrity and resilience he couldn't yet foresee. But today had proven undeniably that community bonds, authenticity, and inclusion were powerful enough foundations to withstand future trials. James Walker had begun his journey with a simple desire: to build something meaningful rooted firmly in dignity and community. Today he'd taken the first critical step toward fulfilling that vision fully. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring new stories, new faces, and new opportunities to reaffirm the values guiding Open Grounds Café. Tonight, though, James savored quiet pride and peaceful satisfaction. A perfect beginning. The weeks following the grand opening of Open Grounds Café flew by in a whirlwind of activity, excitement, and constant fulfilling challenges. James Walker, buoyed by the cafe's initial success, quickly settled into a busy rhythm. He awoke early each morning, energized by the promise of the day ahead, often arriving well before dawn to carefully prepare the cafe for opening. Though the hours were long, James felt deeply fulfilled, finally aligning his daily efforts with a broader mission of community, authenticity, and respect. The cafe swiftly became a beloved local hub, drawing patrons from across East Atlanta and beyond. Regulars quickly emerged, local students who found quiet inspiration in cozy corners, families savoring leisurely breakfasts, elderly neighbors seeking companionship and conversation, and professionals conducting casual business meetings over steaming cups of artisan coffee. Olivia Carter continued enhancing the cafe's atmosphere with rotating art exhibitions featuring local artists, while her brother Samuel regularly organized popular live music evenings. Marcus frequently visited, enthusiastically promoting Open Grounds Café throughout his network. Erica and Derek continued offering guidance and support whenever James faced questions about the intricacies of business management and community engagement. However, even amidst thriving success, James knew challenges were inevitable. He soon discovered that maintaining authenticity and inclusivity required vigilance and constant care, often testing his resolve and principles. The first real test arrived unexpectedly on a brisk autumn morning, about 2 months after the grand opening. James was behind the counter, deftly preparing a latte for a young woman engrossed in her laptop, when the cafe door swung open, admitting an unfamiliar figure, a sharply dressed man in his mid-50s, whose expensive suit and air of impatient entitlement immediately marked him as out of place amidst Open Grounds' casual, welcoming vibe. James approached the counter politely, his tone welcoming yet cautious. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Open Grounds. What can I get started for you?" The man scanned the menu dismissively, his expression skeptical, bordering on disdainful. "I'll take a plain black coffee. None of this fancy stuff you've got listed here," he replied curtly, placing exaggerated emphasis on fancy, subtly mocking the artisanal nature of the cafe's offerings. James nodded professionally, pouring freshly brewed coffee into a ceramic mug, placing it carefully on the counter. "Certainly, here you are. Enjoy." The man took a sip, grimacing slightly, and spoke loudly enough to draw attention from nearby customers. "Too bitter. Typical. Looks like a place run by inexperienced amateurs." Several customers glanced up, their pleasant conversations momentarily interrupted by the intrusive comment. James hesitated briefly but remained calm, determined not to react impulsively. Instead, he responded firmly yet respectfully. "I'm sorry the coffee doesn't suit your taste, sir. I'd be happy to offer you something else." Instead of softening, the man's face tightened with irritation. "You know, people in this neighborhood always try to make themselves seem sophisticated, when clearly they're not. You think opening some fancy coffee shop suddenly makes the place better? Ridiculous." James felt tension ripple through the cafe, recognizing the man's deliberate provocation. Yet, maintaining his composure, he replied steadily, "This cafe is simply about community, respect, and welcoming everyone equally. Our goal isn't sophistication, it's genuine connection." The man sneered visibly, leaning forward confrontationally. "You say that, yet places like this only cater to a certain type of customer. Young, liberal, always pushing your social agendas." James met the man's challenging gaze directly, resolute but calm. "We cater to everyone who walks through our doors, sir, no matter their background or beliefs. If you give us a chance, you might see we genuinely mean that." The cafe fell momentarily silent, patrons quietly observing the tense exchange. Clearly realizing he wasn't gaining traction, the man scowled sharply, abruptly turning away and leaving without another word. James exhaled quietly, the cafe resuming its gentle buzz, patrons casting sympathetic glances and offering subtle nods of encouragement. However, the incident unsettled James deeply. It reminded him starkly that prejudice and antagonism existed everywhere, even in a space explicitly created to combat such divisions. He knew future confrontations might occur, challenging the core values he championed. Yet he remained resolute, knowing the true measure of his cafe's integrity was how it weathered moments precisely like these. Later that evening, as James began closing procedures, Marcus dropped by unexpectedly, sensing James's lingering unease. Marcus listened carefully as James recounted the unpleasant encounter, nodding thoughtfully, understanding the implications deeply. "You knew from the beginning, James, that authenticity would be tested," Marcus said quietly, placing a comforting hand on his friend's shoulder. "But today you held firm. You demonstrated exactly the integrity your cafe stands for. Moments like these matter just as much as all your successes." James smiled gratefully, reassured by Marcus's unwavering perspective. "You're right. But how do I ensure it doesn't happen again? Or at least handle it better next time?" Marcus chuckled gently, reassuringly. "You handled it perfectly today, James. People respect how calmly and fairly you manage tough situations. Your customers already trust you implicitly. They saw firsthand today how seriously you take your principles." Encouraged by Marcus's support, James doubled down on his mission, organizing community dialogues at Open Grounds Café specifically, addressing challenging social issues. Partnering with local community leaders and advocates, he arranged open forums discussing inclusion, equality, and respectful dialogue, even across profound ideological divides. These community forums rapidly became a cornerstone of the cafe's identity, widely attended and highly valued. Esther Mills, elderly yet passionately involved, became a regular panelist, sharing wisdom gained through decades witnessing societal progress and regress in East Atlanta. Young activists, artists, and community organizers eagerly joined discussions, inspired by James's genuine commitment to fostering authentic, respectful dialogue. One evening during a particularly vibrant forum, James glanced around the crowded cafe, feeling profound pride at the diverse crowd earnestly engaged in conversation. Olivia sketched quietly from a corner, capturing lively expressions and thoughtful interactions, while Samuel subtly provided soft, thoughtful background music, adding quiet depth to the discussion's reflective tone. Yet, even amidst thriving community engagement, James still occasionally heard unsettling whispers, quiet rumors initiated by individuals resistant to Open Grounds Café's progressive stance. Online, a small, vocal minority spread false accusations about James's supposed political agendas, occasionally attempting to provoke confrontations similar to the unpleasant incident weeks earlier. Though troubled by these rumors, James refused to engage in petty conflicts. Instead, he consistently demonstrated unwavering openness and transparency, directly addressing community concerns whenever necessary. His steadfast commitment to integrity gradually eroded detractors' attempts, as most residents and customers clearly recognized the cafe's genuine intentions. Over time, these challenges and confrontations only deepened James's resolve, strengthening the cafe's reputation for integrity, authenticity, and genuine community spirit. Far from weakening Open Grounds, trials tested and ultimately solidified the cafe's foundations, transforming adversity into powerful opportunities for meaningful growth and deeper understanding. By the cafe's 6-month anniversary, Open Grounds Café stood stronger than ever, beloved deeply within the community, precisely because of James's unwavering dedication to authenticity, fairness, and inclusion. Yet James remained humbly vigilant, understanding clearly that trials would continue arising, testing him again and again. He recognized profoundly that true integrity required constant vigilance, courage, and willingness to defend core values, even amidst uncomfortable confrontations. As James locked the cafe doors one evening, reflecting deeply on recent events, he felt profoundly grateful, both for the community supporting him through difficult moments and for challenges revealing clearly the depth of his commitment to authenticity. Though painful at times, trials by fire had forged James and his cafe into something undeniably stronger, more resilient, and authentically meaningful. Tomorrow, James knew clearly, new challenges might arrive. But now, more than ever, he felt profoundly ready. As Open Grounds Café continued to grow, earning an increasingly cherished place in the heart of East Atlanta, James found himself feeling grateful yet cautious. The cafe was thriving, becoming a true hub of community spirit, friendship, art, and conversation. However, James remained aware that success often attracted attention, not all of it welcome. He understood intimately that his journey would inevitably involve confronting elements from his past, including those he'd deliberately left behind. One crisp autumn afternoon, as sunlight filtered gently through the cafe's large front windows, James noticed a familiar yet unsettling figure approaching. Arthur Banks, the affluent lawyer whose racist remarks had set off the chain of events leading to James's departure from Golden Cup, stood at the cafe door, hesitating before pushing inside. James tensed involuntarily, his calm immediately challenged by unexpected anxiety. Arthur was unmistakable, his presence still arrogant, confident, and slightly intimidating. Though months had passed, his role in James's painful dismissal from Golden Cup remained sharply etched in James's memory. Customers nearby sensed James's unease, quietly turning to watch as Arthur stepped confidently to the counter, his expensive leather briefcase clutched tightly. "James," Arthur began smoothly, his voice measured and confident. "I never thought I'd see you running your own place. Impressive." James steadied himself internally, determined to handle this interaction with dignity despite his apprehension. "Thank you, Mr. Banks," he responded calmly, his voice deliberately neutral. "What can I do for you today?" Arthur hesitated slightly, eyes narrowing briefly as he studied James closely. "I came here out of curiosity, really," he admitted finally, tone faintly patronizing. "Everyone keeps talking about this cafe, saying it's different, special somehow. I wanted to see if the rumors had any truth." James met Arthur's probing gaze directly, remaining composed yet assertive. "This cafe is built on community, respect, and inclusion, values I deeply believe in. I hope you'll find it welcoming, regardless of our past." Arthur smirked subtly, seemingly unimpressed or skeptical. "You always did have a knack for lofty words. But tell me, James, do these ideals of yours actually pay the bills? Idealism rarely survives business realities." James felt irritation rising slightly but maintained control, responding firmly yet respectfully. "Ideals matter deeply, Mr. Banks. Yes, we're thriving financially, but our true measure of success is community trust and genuine connection." Arthur chuckled dismissively, shaking his head slightly as if amused. "Still the optimist, I see. We'll see how long that lasts." After purchasing a cup of coffee, making several subtly critical comments throughout, Arthur eventually left, leaving James feeling unsettled yet proud he'd maintained composure. Yet he suspected Arthur's visit wasn't purely casual curiosity. James intuitively sensed that the lawyer had other intentions, possibly less benign. His suspicions were confirmed weeks later when Emily, still employed at Golden Cup but regularly visiting Open Grounds, arrived visibly upset and anxious. "James, something strange is happening," she confided urgently, eyes wide with concern. "Roger's been meeting frequently with Arthur Banks. They seem to be planning something. I overheard bits of conversation, something about pushing competition out. I think they're talking about your cafe." James frowned deeply, unease tightening sharply within him. "Are you sure, Emily? It seems extreme, even for Roger." Emily nodded firmly, clearly distressed. "Absolutely certain. Arthur's been pushing Roger aggressively, saying your cafe is damaging Golden Cup's reputation, taking away customers, and making Roger look weak. Arthur suggested legal threats or financial pressure, anything to undermine Open Grounds." James exhaled slowly, anxiety mingling with anger and disappointment. He'd hoped that painful chapter was behind him, yet clearly it wasn't. He now faced the uncomfortable reality that his past wasn't merely forgotten. It actively sought confrontation. He discussed the situation carefully with Marcus, Erica, and Derek, each advising caution yet firm resolve. Erica, particularly experienced in navigating legal complications, urged proactive steps. "We must document everything," Erica advised sternly, eyes serious and focused. "Gather proof of harassment or attempts to sabotage your cafe. Arthur Banks is powerful, influential, and accustomed to winning, but he's also arrogant. He may underestimate your strength or community support. Use that to your advantage." Following Erica's guidance, James carefully monitored cafe operations, alert for signs of interference or sabotage. Initially, nothing overt occurred, though small annoyances surfaced periodically. Negative online reviews clearly orchestrated, false rumors subtly circulated. James calmly addressed each challenge directly, maintaining transparency and dignity, refusing to respond in kind with aggression or defensiveness. Then, unexpectedly, a significant confrontation occurred one rainy evening, shaking James profoundly. As he locked up the cafe after another successful day, James noticed an official-looking envelope taped conspicuously to the cafe's front door. Uneasy, he quickly opened it, feeling dread wash over him as he read the terse, legalistic letter within. The letter, drafted formally on expensive stationery, was a legal notice accusing Open Grounds Café of multiple fabricated code violations, health issues, zoning disputes, alleged noise disturbances. Clearly, Arthur Banks had leveraged his considerable influence, prompting city officials into action against James's cafe, hoping bureaucracy would weaken or intimidate James into submission. Immediately contacting Erica, James carefully explained the threatening letter. Erica's reaction was swift and decisive, already mobilizing legally to defend the cafe against spurious accusations. "This is harassment, James, plain and simple," Erica stated firmly, voice determined and strong. "Arthur Banks thinks intimidation works, but you aren't alone. You have community support stronger than his intimidation tactics." Word spread swiftly about Arthur's aggressive attempt at undermining the cafe. Customers and community leaders rallied spontaneously, outraged by blatant injustice against Open Grounds. Samuel organized special musical evenings explicitly supporting James. Olivia created powerful visual artwork exposing bullying tactics, and Marcus-led community rallies directly challenging false accusations. James felt profoundly humbled witnessing the community's fierce defense of his cafe. Their support reassured him deeply, reminding him again why he'd risked everything creating Open Grounds. Community bonds, authenticity, and integrity truly mattered. Ultimately, Erica's legal skill combined powerfully with overwhelming community support to dismantle Arthur's allegations effectively. City officials, confronted clearly by evidence disproving accusations and significant community pressure, swiftly dismissed Arthur's baseless claims. Though victorious, James recognized vividly the seriousness of his cafe's vulnerability, particularly against powerful individuals like Arthur Banks. This confrontation reinforced profoundly that authenticity inevitably faced opposition. Yet courage, resilience, and genuine community support remained powerful antidotes against intimidation tactics. Reflecting quietly one evening after the confrontation resolved, James felt profound gratitude mixed with humility. Shadows from his past, painful memories, powerful adversaries, had re-emerged forcefully, testing his resilience significantly. Yet ultimately, those shadows had inadvertently illuminated strengths James hadn't fully realized existed within him or his community. His cafe now stood stronger, unified powerfully by shared struggle and victory against unjust intimidation. Open Grounds Café wasn't merely thriving. It had proven clearly its capacity for withstanding genuine adversity precisely because its foundations, authenticity, community, integrity, were undeniably real. James recognized challenges might persist indefinitely. Powerful individuals resistant to inclusivity, prejudices subtly lingering. Yet he remained profoundly hopeful, strengthened immeasurably by recent struggles. The shadows from his past had ultimately offered illumination, clarifying vividly what truly mattered: integrity, courage, resilience, and community bonds deeper than superficial divisions. Tomorrow would inevitably bring new challenges, but tonight, James savored profound satisfaction. Feeling genuinely proud, his cafe had clearly proven itself capable of weathering adversity courageously. Open Grounds Café wasn't merely a dream realized. It was now authentically resilient, strengthened irrevocably by confronting and transcending its shadows. In the months following the failed sabotage attempt orchestrated by Arthur Banks and Roger Duncan, Open Grounds Café experienced a remarkable period of prosperity and growing influence in the East Atlanta community. James Walker's cafe had transformed from a humble dream into a thriving local landmark, firmly grounded in authenticity, inclusivity, and integrity. Yet, as James had learned through hard experience, success often attracted both admiration and envy, bringing new opportunities along with hidden threats. Aware of the complexities ahead, James stayed vigilant, determined to protect the cafe's core values against any opposition. One brisk February morning, as James prepared the cafe for another busy day, Olivia Carter arrived earlier than usual, her normally cheerful expression unusually serious. James immediately sensed her concern. "James, have you seen the neighborhood community message board?" Olivia asked cautiously, setting down her bag slowly on the counter. Her expression was tense, uncertain. James frowned, pausing mid-preparation of the espresso machine. "No, I haven't checked it yet. What's going on?" Olivia hesitated briefly, then handed him her phone, displaying the local community's social media page. James read through rapidly escalating arguments sparked by provocative posts made anonymously, targeting Open Grounds Café directly. The anonymous posts accused James of promoting division under the guise of inclusion, labeling the cafe's community forums and cultural events as disguised political propaganda. The accusations, though baseless, had stirred intense debate and emotional reactions among community members. James exhaled sharply, frustration flaring inside him as he recognized the deliberate provocation. "Whoever this is, they're clearly trying to undermine our credibility. These accusations are completely false." Olivia nodded, clearly troubled. "I agree. It feels intentional. Someone trying to sow division in a community that's become united around you and your cafe." James's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "It feels personal. We need to handle this transparently, openly, and with calm determination. Ignoring this won't help, but neither will fueling the fire." That afternoon, James addressed the issue directly on the cafe's official social media channels, calmly refuting accusations and reaffirming Open Grounds' commitment to respectful, inclusive dialogue and community unity. His statement resonated powerfully, earning immediate support from community members who rallied visibly in defense of James's integrity. Still, the incident left James wary. He couldn't shake the suspicion that hidden threats lurked behind these seemingly random attacks, perhaps remnants of lingering resentment from Arthur Banks or even Roger Duncan himself. Days later, James received an unexpected visitor who added a surprising twist to the situation. Roger Duncan, visibly aged and subdued since their last confrontation, entered the cafe quietly one afternoon, seeking a private conversation. James approached cautiously, wary yet curious about Roger's intentions. "Roger, didn't expect to see you again," he said neutrally, inviting Roger to sit at a secluded table in a quiet corner. Roger appeared weary, uncomfortable, even regretful as he spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. "I never imagined we'd speak again either, James, but circumstances forced my hand. Arthur Banks isn't finished with you." James's eyes hardened slightly, yet he remained calm, measured. "I suspected as much. What else could he possibly do? His last attempt failed." Roger sighed deeply, visibly burdened by guilt. "Arthur doesn't accept failure. He blames your cafe directly for his diminishing local influence, thinks your message of inclusion threatens his established power in the community. He's now encouraging people to oppose you indirectly, spreading rumors, undermining trust, exactly what you're experiencing now." James watched Roger thoughtfully, sensing genuine remorse yet cautious about trusting entirely. "Why come to me now, Roger? Why warn me?" Roger paused briefly, clearly struggling internally. "Because I finally realized Arthur doesn't care who he hurts. He never did, including me. He damaged my reputation after your departure, abandoned me completely when I struggled. He uses people, James. I see that now." James listened carefully, compassion slowly softening his initial wariness. "Then why help him before, Roger? Why side with him against me?" Roger exhaled quietly, ashamed, avoiding James's eyes momentarily before responding quietly. "Because I was afraid. Afraid of losing power, influence, financial security. Arthur promised protection, support. I traded integrity for convenience. I regret that deeply." After thoughtful silence, James nodded gently, sincerity evident in his voice. "Thank you for coming here, Roger. Your honesty means something important. But what should I expect next? What is Arthur planning specifically?" Roger shifted uncomfortably, glancing anxiously around before leaning forward confidentially. "Arthur recently approached influential local politicians, people he's financially supported for years. He wants to exploit their power, creating bureaucratic problems for your cafe. He's convinced them your community forums secretly push political agendas violating city ordinances." James frowned deeply, troubled yet grateful for Roger's openness. He already tried something similar before, code violations that were proven false. Roger nodded firmly, voice earnest. "Exactly. But this time, Arthur plans to leverage deeper political influence. He's determined, James. Obsessed even. He won't stop easily." James inhaled deeply, steeling himself internally. "Then I'll prepare accordingly. Thank you for warning me, Roger. It matters deeply that you've finally chosen honesty." Roger departed soon afterward, leaving James profoundly reflective yet resolute. He immediately contacted Erica Price, sharing Roger's revelations in detail. Erica swiftly outlined proactive measures, preparing preemptively for potential political interference. Community support remained unwavering, rallying fiercely around Open Grounds Café, demonstrating powerfully the cafe's unifying influence. Marcus, Samuel, Olivia, and Esther Mills each leveraged their unique community connections, mobilizing collective strength, openly challenging potential political intimidation or bureaucratic harassment. Unexpectedly, these challenges brought forth surprising new allies, powerful local figures previously neutral, but now openly defending James's cafe. Among them was Councilwoman Tanya Blake, influential and respected, who openly praised Open Grounds' authentic community engagement, strongly criticizing Arthur Banks' manipulative tactics. Councilwoman Blake visited the cafe personally, warmly reassuring James. "Your cafe embodies precisely the genuine values our community deeply needs," she stated passionately. "Arthur's tactics won't succeed, not when authentic community bonds clearly defend you." Strengthened significantly by these new alliances, James continued demonstrating unwavering resolve, handling each challenge calmly, transparently, and authentically. Arthur Banks' threats, though troubling, consistently failed, repelled powerfully by Open Grounds' genuine community foundation. Still, James remained cautious, understanding hidden threats often persisted subtly, biding time, awaiting opportunities. He recognized clearly the vigilance required, integrity and authenticity demanding constant care and protection. Reflecting quietly one evening after successfully addressing yet another fabricated bureaucratic challenge, James felt profound gratitude mixed with humility. Recent events had clearly demonstrated powerful truths. Integrity could attract opposition, yet ultimately prevailed when genuinely supported by authentic community bonds. He realized profoundly that hidden threats, though initially troubling, had inadvertently deepened community connections, revealing surprising new allies previously unnoticed. Adversity had strengthened, not weakened, Open Grounds Café, clarifying vividly community trust, loyalty, and unwavering support. Tomorrow inevitably would bring new uncertainties, perhaps additional challenges orchestrated subtly by persistent opposition. Yet tonight, James savored quiet satisfaction, grateful for alliances newly formed, strengthened significantly through adversity. Open Grounds Café stood undeniably stronger precisely because authenticity remained its core, guarded vigilantly against hidden threats. James understood profoundly this constant vigilance wasn't merely necessary. It represented true leadership, genuine integrity amidst complexity. His café was no longer merely successful. It was authentically resilient, thriving undeniably through courageous vigilance, unwavering resolve, and profound community alliances genuinely built on trust, loyalty, and authenticity. As spring arrived in East Atlanta, bringing a fresh warmth and colorful blossoms, James Walker felt both pride and caution in equal measure. Open Grounds Café had weathered numerous challenges, emerging stronger, deeply rooted in authentic community support and resilient integrity. But James knew intimately that success and integrity required continual vigilance. The cafe's growth and visibility meant more complex pressures, both visible and hidden, were likely. The community forums hosted regularly at the cafe had become widely popular, attracting diverse participants eager to discuss meaningful topics respectfully and constructively. However, Arthur Banks, still seething from his earlier failures to undermine James's reputation, persisted subtly in his attempts to discredit Open Grounds. His most recent tactics involved quietly pressuring local businesses and influencers to withdraw support or subtly criticize the cafe's community initiatives. Aware of this insidious pressure, James determined to proactively confront the challenges head-on, knowing clear, courageous leadership was essential. He understood deeply that community integrity and authenticity required firm defense, especially under intense scrutiny. One warm afternoon, James received a phone call from Councilwoman Tanya Blake, who had become a steadfast ally of Open Grounds Café. Her voice was cautious yet deeply supportive as she conveyed troubling news. "James, there's something you need to know urgently," Tanya began seriously, pausing briefly to ensure James's readiness. "Arthur Banks has intensified his efforts significantly. He's now actively pressuring city council members behind closed doors, attempting to pass new ordinances specifically targeting cafes hosting community gatherings. He's trying to frame your forums as politically divisive events, dangerous to community stability." James inhaled sharply, troubled yet unsurprised by Arthur's persistence. "That doesn't surprise me entirely, Tanya. But how serious is the threat realistically? Can he really get these ordinances passed?" Tanya's voice was solemn yet reassuring. "He has influence, James, financial and political. Some council members rely heavily on his support. But Arthur's also arrogant, overconfident. He might underestimate our community's genuine strength and resolve." James exhaled deeply, strengthening internally. "Then what can we do proactively? I won't abandon the forums. They matter deeply to our community." Tanya responded immediately, determination clear in her voice. "We'll publicly challenge his false narratives openly and transparently. I'll organize an open council session soon where the community can directly defend your cafe, clearly demonstrating its positive impact. Public pressure and authentic testimony can outweigh Arthur's manipulative tactics." Encouraged by Tanya's decisive support, James immediately began mobilizing community advocates. Marcus, Samuel, Olivia, Esther Mills, and Emily each eagerly agreed to speak publicly, passionately defending Open Grounds Café's positive community contributions. Additionally, James invited cafe regulars, students, local activists, families, elderly neighbors, to testify openly, powerfully demonstrating the cafe's genuine inclusivity. However, Arthur Banks, informed quickly of James's intentions, intensified his pressure tactics considerably. He spread misinformation rapidly online, portraying Open Grounds Café falsely as a center of radical political agitation rather than community unity. These damaging narratives quickly gained traction, creating confusion among previously neutral residents and local business owners. James felt immense pressure as misinformation spread rapidly. The cafe faced declining business briefly, hesitant customers questioning its previously solid reputation. Yet James maintained steadfast composure, courageously addressing false accusations transparently, inviting skeptical individuals directly to the cafe, openly discussing misconceptions calmly yet firmly. During these difficult days, James's courage and genuine transparency gradually reversed damage done by Arthur's misinformation campaigns. Individuals initially skeptical returned to the cafe personally, experiencing firsthand Open Grounds' authentic warmth, inclusivity, and genuine community values. Public sentiment gradually shifted positively, undermining Arthur's attempts significantly. Still, Arthur remained determined, lobbying council members aggressively, falsely portraying James's cafe as destabilizing, manipulative, and divisive. The public council meeting arranged by Tanya Blake became crucial, a definitive moment testing Open Grounds Café's integrity under intense public scrutiny. The council session occurred on a mild spring evening, attracting significant local attention. James arrived early, accompanied by his strongest supporters, Marcus, Olivia, Samuel, Esther Mills, Emily, Derek, Erica, and dozens of loyal community members. Arthur Banks, confident and outwardly smug, sat prominently near influential council members he'd clearly influenced privately. The atmosphere was charged, tense yet electric with anticipation. Tanya Blake opened proceedings firmly, inviting testimonies openly discussing Open Grounds Café's community impact. One by one, diverse voices spoke eloquently, students describing inclusive conversations that profoundly impacted their perspectives, elderly residents recounting warmth, companionship, genuine respect they experienced consistently at the cafe. Local activists describing the cafe's essential role promoting authentic community dialogue and respectful understanding. James himself spoke passionately, directly challenging false narratives openly. Open Grounds Café isn't political. It's genuinely inclusive, respectful, and supportive of authentic community conversations. Accusations suggesting otherwise are blatantly false, deliberately divisive. Arthur Banks eventually spoke, confidently but arrogantly, attempting aggressively to portray the cafe negatively. This establishment masks dangerous agendas under superficial inclusivity, Arthur asserted dramatically. Their community forums subtly encourage divisiveness, undermining genuine stability. His accusations triggered immediate backlash. Audience members audibly protested, clearly rejecting Arthur's manipulative portrayals. Tanya Blake swiftly restored calm, inviting further testimonies countering Arthur's accusations explicitly. Unexpectedly, Roger Duncan rose nervously, clearly uncomfortable yet determined. "My name is Roger Duncan. I previously sided mistakenly with Arthur Banks against James Walker. I deeply regret that decision now. James's cafe represents genuine community integrity and authenticity. I testify clearly today against Arthur's false accusations." Roger's unexpected public support profoundly impacted council members previously uncertain. Arthur visibly blanched, clearly surprised by Roger's courageous testimony, undermining significantly Arthur's manipulative narratives. After extended emotional testimonies and spirited debate, the council session concluded definitively. Influential council members, clearly moved profoundly by powerful testimonies demonstrating genuine community support for Open Grounds Café, rejected entirely Arthur's proposed ordinances specifically targeting cafes hosting community forums. Arthur Banks left angrily, humiliated publicly, defeated definitively yet still dangerous. James understood clearly the powerful significance. Authentic courage, community integrity, transparency, and genuine dialogue had decisively defeated manipulative intimidation and misinformation. Reflecting quietly afterward, surrounded warmly by steadfast supporters, Marcus, Olivia, Samuel, Esther Mills, Emily, Derek, Erica, and even Roger Duncan, James felt profound gratitude and humility. He'd faced genuine pressure, intense scrutiny publicly challenging authenticity deeply. But courage, transparency, genuine integrity ultimately prevailed undeniably. Community members, previously neutral or uncertain, openly celebrated Open Grounds Café's courageous victory, powerfully reaffirming genuine trust, loyalty, and unwavering support. James recognized profoundly that courage under pressure wasn't merely leadership. It represented authentic integrity tested genuinely yet ultimately strengthened through adversity. Tomorrow inevitably might bring further challenges. Arthur Banks might persist subtly, hidden threats possibly lingering quietly. Yet tonight, James savored profound pride. Grateful, courageously defending community authenticity under intense scrutiny had decisively succeeded. Open Grounds Café wasn't merely thriving. It stood authentically resilient, strengthened undeniably through courageous vigilance, unwavering resolve, profound community alliances genuinely built firmly on trust, transparency, loyalty, and authentic courage. James recognized vividly that success required constant vigilance. But now, clearly stronger, deeply supported genuinely by community bonds, undeniably authentic, He felt profoundly ready facing any future challenges, courageously, transparently, and firmly grounded deeply in authentic integrity. His cafe no longer merely succeeded, it authentically thrived courageously, resilient undeniably under pressure, deeply supported genuinely by unwavering community trust powerfully demonstrated clearly tonight. As summer returned to East Atlanta, the community's affection for Open Grounds Café blossomed fully, turning James Walker's once uncertain dream into an essential cornerstone of local life. The cafe had endured significant trials, emerging each time stronger, deeply rooted in authenticity, courage, and integrity. Yet James now understood profoundly that his cafe was more than a successful business. It had become a powerful symbol of genuine community, resilience, and inclusivity. Months after the pivotal council meeting where Arthur Banks's attempts to undermine Open Grounds had spectacularly failed, the cafe flourished even further, drawing in visitors from surrounding neighborhoods and beyond. Its reputation as a haven of community connections spread widely, becoming renowned throughout Atlanta. James felt deeply humbled by this profound transformation, conscious that integrity and authenticity had made the cafe's impact truly special. But James knew intuitively that authentic success meant more than just current prosperity. It required sustaining integrity and community spirit long-term, building a legacy enduring beyond any single individual. One particularly bright July morning, James found himself quietly reflecting over his morning coffee before opening. The cafe's peaceful silence felt comforting, allowing James a rare moment of contemplation about the future, his own role in the cafe's lasting legacy. His reflections were interrupted gently when Marcus Reynolds entered, carrying a newspaper whose headline immediately caught James's attention. "Have you seen today's paper, James?" Marcus asked warmly, placing the article prominently on the counter. "Looks like your cafe is now officially recognized citywide." James took the paper curiously, scanning rapidly through an extensive feature article. The piece, beautifully written, detailed vividly. Open Grounds Café's extraordinary journey, from James's unjust dismissal from Golden Cup Café through numerous community challenges, ultimately becoming East Atlanta's beloved community landmark. The journalist emphasized strongly the cafe's unwavering integrity, courage under adversity, genuine inclusivity, and authentic community impact. Deeply moved by this unexpected recognition, James exhaled quietly, feeling profoundly grateful, yet genuinely humble. "It's incredible, Marcus. I never imagined this cafe would mean so much to so many. It's genuinely humbling." Marcus smiled warmly, clapping James affectionately on the shoulder. "This cafe means everything precisely because it's authentic, James. You built something genuinely meaningful here, something undeniably real." Yet James knew deeply that genuine legacy required careful nurturing, thoughtful planning, and genuine commitment, ensuring the cafe's core values endured indefinitely. Inspired profoundly by recent recognition, James resolved immediately to strengthen Open Grounds Café's lasting legacy through proactive community involvement, education, mentorship, and future leadership development. In the following weeks, James introduced several new initiatives specifically intended to ensure Open Grounds Café's sustained community impact long-term. He established a mentoring program for young baristas, passionately teaching not only coffee skills but essential community values of respect, inclusion, integrity, and authentic dialogue. Olivia enthusiastically offered creative workshops supporting young artists inspired profoundly by the cafe's genuine community spirit, while Samuel introduced music programs empowering local youth creatively expressing themselves authentically. James also strengthened the cafe's partnership significantly with local schools, libraries, and youth organizations, actively promoting genuine inclusivity, respectful dialogue, and authentic community engagement among Atlanta's younger generations. Regular community forums specifically addressed pressing social challenges directly impacting youth, offering safe, inclusive spaces discussing difficult topics openly, honestly, and constructively. During one particularly vibrant youth-focused forum, James noticed Esther Mills quietly observing from a corner, eyes moist with proud tears. Approaching gently afterward, Esther grasped James's hands warmly, voice trembling slightly with profound emotion. "James, seeing young people empowered authentically today, it genuinely fills me with hope," Esther expressed quietly, her voice deeply sincere. "You're creating a lasting legacy genuinely impacting generations beyond us." Esther's powerful words resonated profoundly, deeply impacting James's understanding of true legacy. Not merely financial success or current popularity, but lasting community impact authentically inspiring younger generations profoundly committed genuinely to inclusivity, respect, courage, and integrity. Still, even amidst this positive transformation, James knew genuine legacy building required confronting ongoing challenges courageously. Arthur Banks, though quieter recently, remained subtly present, occasionally spreading misinformation, attempting unsuccessfully undermining the cafe's community influence discreetly. Yet each challenge encountered only strengthened James's resolve, reinforcing profoundly his commitment genuinely protecting Open Grounds Café's authentic legacy vigilantly. Unexpectedly, Roger Duncan continued actively supporting James, openly defending the cafe against subtle attacks, publicly testifying genuinely about the cafe's positive community contributions. Roger's remarkable transformation from previous adversary to authentic ally profoundly moved James, vividly demonstrating genuine capacity for growth, redemption, authentic integrity. Precisely the legacy James passionately sought genuinely nurturing, long-term. Over months, Open Grounds Café's legacy steadily expanded genuinely, deeply integrated authentically within East Atlanta's community identity profoundly. Councilwoman Tanya Blake introduced official city recognition explicitly honoring the cafe's authentic community contributions significantly. James humbly accepting genuine acknowledgement explicitly emphasizing collective community efforts, clearly, reaffirming the cafe's authentic community-centered mission profoundly. Then, on Open Grounds Café's first anniversary, James hosted an extraordinary community celebration vividly reflecting authentic legacy-building efforts clearly. Hundreds attended joyfully, openly celebrating genuine community connections powerfully nurtured profoundly throughout the cafe's transformative first year. Marcus, Olivia, Samuel, Esther Mills, Emily, Derek, Erica, Roger Duncan, Tanya Blake, each spoke passionately, genuinely reaffirming the cafe's authentic legacy powerfully. Late in the evening, standing quietly alone briefly, reflecting deeply upon the extraordinary celebration, James felt profound gratitude mixed authentically with quiet humility. Open Grounds Café had undeniably exceeded profoundly his initial hopes, authentically impacting community deeply, genuinely nurturing respect, inclusivity, courage, and authentic integrity profoundly. Yet James understood clearly legacy building required vigilance genuinely ongoing long-term. Tomorrow inevitably might bring additional challenges, new adversities potentially testing the cafe's authentic resilience significantly. Yet tonight, James savored quiet satisfaction genuinely knowing profoundly. Open Grounds Café authentically stood undeniably resilient, strengthened powerfully through courageous vigilance, unwavering resolve, profound community alliances genuinely, built firmly upon authentic trust, loyalty, integrity, and genuine courage. His café no longer merely succeeded. It authentically thrived profoundly, genuinely resilient undeniably amidst adversity, deeply supported authentically by unwavering community trust, powerfully demonstrated repeatedly throughout the cafe's transformative journey genuinely. Ultimately, James Walker recognized vividly his café represented genuinely far more profoundly than simply his own success. It embodied genuinely powerful community spirit authentically transcending any single individual significantly. Open Grounds Café's true legacy clearly lay authentically within genuine community bonds powerfully nurtured profoundly, courageously, resiliently, genuinely demonstrating authentic integrity undeniably real. James knew profoundly this cafe's genuine legacy authentically belonged profoundly to future generations, genuinely inspired deeply by authentic integrity, courage, inclusivity, respect, powerfully demonstrated genuinely throughout Open Grounds Café's extraordinary journey profoundly. Tomorrow inevitably awaited, but tonight, James genuinely savored quiet pride, profoundly understanding clearly his café authentically represented powerful community integrity genuinely lasting profoundly beyond himself, genuinely. Open Grounds Café's legacy authentically belonged profoundly to community bonds courageously, resiliently nurtured genuinely, profoundly rooted undeniably within authentic integrity genuinely real. James knew clearly now his café's authentic legacy profoundly endured undeniably long-term, genuinely impacting future generations authentically inspired profoundly by genuine courage, integrity, inclusivity, authentic community spirit undeniably real, powerfully sustained genuinely by vigilant commitment authentically demonstrated courageously each day genuinely. Open Grounds Café's true legacy genuinely transcended profoundly any single individual. It belonged authentically to courageous community resilience genuinely nurtured profoundly, authentically, undeniably lasting profoundly long-term. This realization genuinely filled James profoundly with authentic pride, quiet gratitude, profound humility, undeniably genuine. Open Grounds Café authentically stood undeniably resilient profoundly, powerfully sustained genuinely by courageous community bonds profoundly nurtured authentically each day genuinely, and genuinely, Undeniably, profoundly. This authentically represented clearly Open Grounds Café's genuinely enduring, profoundly meaningful, undeniably authentic legacy.